The Death of Hermes. Chapter 3. Hermes remains still. Hermes didn't know how much time had passed since he crashed in Tartarus. He remained still, lying on the floor and staring at the ceiling. He focused on the stalactites up above him, counting them over and over again. The familiar sound of the rowing of a boat did not break him from his trance. He could hear Charon approaching in his boat, floating over where the little god was. Hermes did not move an inch as Charon entered his field of vision. His glowing purple eyes stared down at him, a very thin line of smoke emanating from his mouth. He could feel the worry in Charon's mind, and felt a massive pang of guilt in his stomach. "Hey." His voice was so low he could barely hear himself. "How is it going?" Charon scratched at his head. The Stygian ferryman looked around them, as if to make sure they were in private. No shades were around, just Hermes. He stuck out like a sore thumb in the middle of a green-hued Tartarus, his scarf and wings framing him in a golden light. It was pretty impossible to hide his presence. Charon hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do next in regards to him. After deciding for a moment, he proceeded to sit down next to Hermes, letting go of his oar as it floated next to him. They both remained there in silence. He felt his throat itch, feeling the need to talk but not knowing what even to say. What do you even say in this situation? How could he begin to explain what happened? "I'm sorry I ran. Hermes took a deep breath. "You were there, and Lord Hades was there too, and I didn't know what to do, and..." Hermes' words just spilled out of his mouth. He didn't even know what to say first. Words piling up each other after the other, ending him with not saying a single thing. He stopped, biting his tongue as he attempted to calm his thoughts enough to speak. Charon said nothing, giving him time to organize his ideas. "Uncle Hades sent you to find me, didn't he?" Charon whispered in an affirmative tone. "They must think I'm on my way to Olympus to tell everyone I found Demeter's lost daughter." Hermes closed his eyes, exhausted. "I don't blame them. They didn't have any idea that I already knew who she was. They are probably extremely worried right now. But, well, we all know I can't get out of here without you giving me a ride anyways. They're probably waiting for you to return me to the house, eh?" Charon worries, and Hermes knows. Charon still had no idea what actually happened to him, but still he was there to retrieve him from the Styx. It made something squeeze inside his chest, not in pain, but in tenderness. "You knew I died." He turned to face the boatman, who stared down at him with his deep eyes. "You were there." He pointed at the Styx. Charon had a deep connection with the river. At first, Hermes believed that he just controlled it, but he was wrong. The Styx made Charon, and Charon made the Styx. The same way Hermes was connected to commerce, Charon was connected to the river. Charon felt when Hermes was reborn from it and reached out for him. Did the boatman feel when the Styx cold fingers wrapped around his dead body and took him home to the pool? Could he feel Hermes' limp form being carried away? It really hurt. Hermes tried his hardest to not show any weakness, but his voice was slightly breaking. Dying and being reborn. It really hurt. Is that what Zacharias feels when he dies? Does he have to go through all that? Charon stared, hand touching Hermes' bicep gently, unable to offer any answer. I don't know how he does it. He could feel Charon deep in worry. He traced Hermes' muscles in his arms with his fingers, smoke slowly falling off him. He could feel his concern, fearing what it was that really happened to Hermes, and yet he didn't hound him with questions or demanded Hermes to explain. He just sat there with him, waiting for the little god to feel comfortable enough to open up. It wasn't a bear. Yes, I know. It was a really stupid lie. But it was the first thing I thought of, okay? I was in a bind that moment, and it's not like I felt I could tell the truth. Hermes waved his arms, frustrated by his own stupidity. Why couldn't I tell the truth? Because if I did, Lord Hades would know that I already knew about Persephone. But it was meaningless because now I for sure know she is here. I called her Queen Persephone to her face. His voice started to raise in exasperation, not aimed at Charon, but at himself. And who knows what Hades will do to me now that I know, just so I don't spread the news to Olympus. Charon rubbed circles on Hermes' back soothingly, but he still didn't know how to react. Hermes sat up, wrapping his arms around Charon and hugging tightly. The boatman's stiff body grounded him from everything, and Charon just passed his fingers through Hermes' hair. He could feel Charon's confusion and concern. Hermes felt his heartstrings tug at knowing that the boatman still attempted his best to comfort him despite not knowing what happened and how he died. The least he could do was tell Charon what happened to him. So he told him.
Lord Hermes, the voice called from deep within Olympus. Do you have a moment?
Hermes swallowed, anxiety prickling at his skin. He couldn't say no, realizing with a tired sigh he would be late to meeting Charon. Great. He knew the boatman wouldn't mind, yet he still felt shitty for leaving him waiting in the Temple of Styx. Hermes took a deep breath and then started running. He ran towards the voice, zipping around the hallways and climbing up the stairs up to the highest floor. Despite Mount Olympus being a labyrinth, Hermes knew it like the back of his hand, being able to traverse it in very few minutes. Normally, he would be more annoyed than worried at being called just before he left, but his previous encounter with the goddess Demeter left Hermes with a bad taste in his mouth. He just wanted to get out of Olympus and spend the rest of the night with Charon. Despite Olympus being so beautiful, there was something about it that made Hermes feel trapped. Hermes stopped just outside the door, about to knock against its intricate designed surface, but decided not to, instead just pushing it open and slipping inside. The room was heavily decorated, bordering on being tacky. Different weapons were mounted on the walls, made out of gold. Everyone, including Hermes, had several items decorating their rooms, but in this case it seemed like the epitome of narcissism. The walls were littered with paintings, statues, and tributes, making Hermes feel humble for once in his life. Fit for Zeus. "Good night, father," Hermes greeted as he slipped inside the room, closing the door behind him. He always felt so small inside Zeus' quarters. The heavily adorned room made him feel like nothing but just an ant passing by. Zeus was sitting on one of his chairs, a glass of ambrosia between his fingers. There was barely any light in the room, most of the candles being out. It framed his father in a dark light as he swirled around the ambrosia in his glass, the golden liquid shining under the faint light. He looked anxious, bordering and being worried, something that Hermes had rarely seen. "Did you call for me?" Hermes asked, stepping further inside. "Any messages to send? Any love letters to deliver to young beautiful maidens?" He boarded in the insulting, but Hermes wasn't sure how to lighten up the mood. He could feel the thick atmosphere, something weighing his father down. And besides, it was true. Zeus only ever called him to deliver love letters and presents to whoever mortal he decided to bed next. But Zeus remained quiet, simply staring at one of his paintings. It started to make Hermes panic. This behavior from his father was just unnatural. He had never seen him this concerned before. "Lord Father?" Hermes called. Trepidation crawled up his spine. "Son," he finally spoke, taking a sip from the ambrosia in his glass. "Lord Hermes." "Yes?" "I assume you've heard about your cousin, Lord Hades' son, Zagreus." Yeah, I've heard from the others that he is trying to escape the underworld to Mount Olympus. Poor fella. Can't imagine living all your life in the underworld. It is much better up here, if you ask me. At least we got the sun. Sue said nothing, staring at his glass instead. You guys were helping him, right? I heard Ares talking about landing Ka's his blessing so he could escape easily. I am sure he appreciates all your help.
That is right. We are lending him our powers so he can leave his father's domain and join us here in Olympus.
He finally spoke, but it didn't make Hermes feel better. The bottle of ambrosia beside his father was practically empty, apart from the liquid in his hand.
Tell me, son, do you personally deliver the messages we sent to your uncle, Lord Hades?
No, Hermes lied quickly despite being caught by surprise. They don't allow me. Only chthonic beings can enter. I deliver them to Charon, who delivers them for me.
The Stygian boatman? I see.
Zeus did not seem to believe his lie, but said nothing. He just drank the last bit of ambrosia, still swirling the empty glass between his digits. Is something the matter, father? He dared ask.
I've been thinking, and I realized something funny. When we grant our blessings, we are not physically there, yet we can see for a few moments our surroundings. I granted your cousin Zagreus a blessing in the Temple of Styx quite recently.
Hermes started to panic, but he remained still as his father spoke.
I've been noticing something very interesting, Lord Hermes. I've been noticing Zagreus is very fast. Unnaturally so. At first I thought that is just how the lad was. Sometimes people are fast. Maybe it was his natural prowess, granted by the darkness of the underworld.
He refused to look at Hermes, simply continued staring at one of the paintings Zeus had in his room. It was a painting of him killing the Titans, Hermes' grandparents.
And yet, this time when I saw him, I couldn't help but notice he was carrying something tied around his waist. A very familiar thing. A golden feather, in fact.
The lambent plume. Hermes felt his stomach sink. He quickly eyed the open balcony, an escape route, just in case. He didn't know how angry his father would be knowing Hermes was helping Zagreus behind his back. He stared down at his own feet on the floor. I just wanted to help him too, father. I do not think it is right he is stuck in Hades' domain. He should be here with us. He has chosen to. I can help you help him. Zeus stared at him with something akin to hatred. Hermes knew the old god was proud, but he didn't believe his intervention deserved this level of scorn. Did he figure something else out? Hermes stared at his father still. His wings twitched anxiously against his head, unsure of what was going through Zeus's mind.
Lord Hermes, god of trickery.
There was venom in Zeus's voice. Hermes stood still, not knowing what to do or say to cool off the situation. His lip trembled as he forced himself to stare up at Zeus, refusing to look away from his father.
You know, don't you?
Hermes felt a chill go down his spine. His brows knit, shaking his head. Know what?
You do. You know.
Zeus stood up full height. Hermes had to twist his neck to look up at him. I don't understand what you're talking about, father. Know what, exactly? The hatred in Zeus' face was replaced by sheer panic. The god of thunder started to sweat, eyes just staring daggers at Hermes. He could see the internal struggle Zeus was having with himself, not knowing what to do.
You know about her. You know she is there.
Hermes stepped back as his father started to ramble away. He didn't seem to be guided by rational thought, just panic as he kept stepping towards Hermes.
You know she is down there, don't you?
What are you talking about, father? Who are you talking about? He feigned ignorance once more, finally jumping in the air and floating away from Zeus. Panic bit at him, telling him to run away.
Kore!
Zeus threw his now empty glass at Hermes. It exploded at his feet, glass flying everywhere. Hermes covered his face with the glass. Zeus approached him violently, his giant hand engulfing Hermes' arm as he pulled at him. Zeus's eyes were red and Hermes could smell the alcohol in his breath.
You know about her. If she ever knows that she is in the underworld, Demeter...
Father! Hermes pulled his arm out of Zeus's grip, managing to get away. He eyed the balcony once more. Hermes flew away. He flew past the balcony and into the night sky. His heart was pummeling against his chest, ears ringing loudly. Everything was happening so fast, Hermes couldn't think straight. The only mission was to get out of Olympus, escape Zeus. He was violently yanked back by his scarf. Hermes choked as he was dragged inside once more, his fingers digging at his windpipe in a desperate attempt to breathe. Zeus grabbed him by the leg and pulled, twisting around and throwing Hermes around, slamming him harshly against the wall. Hermes crashed against one of the paintings and plates, destroying the wooden frame and shattering the ceramic with his father's face in it. His satchel fell off and its contents spilled across the floor. The bottle of ambrosia meant for Charon shattered, its golden liquid spreading like blood. He lurched forward in pain, hands wrapped around his stomach.
If Demeter finds out, there's not knowing what she will do.
The sky outside Olympus crackled with electricity above the clouds.
Do you understand the situation we are in? Do you know what is at stake?
Zeus stood tall in front of Hermes. He stared down at him, eyes glazed over, panic taking over him. Hermes crawled backwards away from his father, too weak to run away. He was caged like a bird, trying to escape with broken wings. His father ripped away one of the many swords mounted in his wall, moving with purpose. He crossed his room in seconds while Hermes pathetically attempted to escape, his small body unable to crawl away fast enough before Zeus reached him. It was over in seconds. Zeus brought down the sword. It went through Hermes' chest like a hot knife through butter. It pierced the center of his ribcage and came out through his back and broke the floor, pinning Hermes like a dead butterfly in display. His wings beat violently, trying to fly away to no use, his fingers clawing at his chest in animalistic desperation. His chiton immediately started to stain with red blood, a reminder of his mortal descendants. Hot pain spread through his veins in an instant. His skin felt like it was melting like hot wax. Hermes opened his mouth, attempting to scream. Only a whimper came out. Tears spilled from his eyes. Zeus knelt beside him, eyes bloodshot. He stared at Hermes as he writhed in pain, hands grasping at the sword in his chest and cutting his palms with a sharp, unforgiving blade. Blood cascaded down his arms, leaving veins of red in his golden cuffs. He pulled out the sword off Hermes' lithe body in a swift movement. The blade exited his chest with a sharp, squelching sound. Hermes screamed in pain, back arching towards the sky. Zeus grabbed him by the hair, pulling his head back and forcing him to stare at Zeus's face. Hermes stared at his blue eyes, his father's mind being governed by irrationality. He no longer was thinking. He acted in his fear of Hermes' knowledge. He could feel the deep hatred behind those eyes. Hermes' bloody hands grasped at his father's fingers as he gripped into his hair hard. He let go of Hermes, letting his body fall to the ground once more. Hermes still panicked, leaving Hermes' body behind as he left the room, staring down the darkened, electrified clouds in the balcony. He rolled his body to lay on his side, curling into himself. His ever-flowing scarf lay limply around him, framing his body and displaying the work of art that was his bloody, broken form. Hermes pressed his hand against the wound in his chest, crimson blood pouring out of his frail body. Hermes stared at his father's back as he felt the life drain out of him, his breathing becoming shallow, the edges of his vision turning red. The last thing he saw was the shattered bottle of ambrosia on the floor, the golden liquid mixing up with Hermes' mortal blood. The cool, soothing fingers of Styx started to envelop him gently, ready to take him away. He was taken by the Styx.